Hello, Brian Weeks here again with another MMCD contract consideration. This video clip will cover the topic of quality assurance and quality control testing. There is a certain amount of confusion shown in forum and class questions about the difference between quality assurance and quality control. In this video, I hope to bring some clarity to this topic as well as discussing testing and retesting options. Part of the confusion comes from the difference between how other contracts handle these two types of testing compared to the MMCD. Other contracts often have the owner engage and pay one or more testing firms to do quality assurance. These firms work concurrently with the contractor but report directly to the owner. As I will discuss, the MMCD handles testing differently, with the contract administrator, or CA for short, receiving quality assurance test reports from the contractor and reporting them back to the owner. Under the MMCD, the owner specifies tests to be done for its own reassurance that the work is meeting the contractually required standards. These tests are part of the contract requirements, and the contractor is obliged to perform them or arrange for them to be performed during the course of the work. Occasionally, the costs of quality assurance testing are broken out into the specific line items in the schedule of quantities and prices. But more often, they're just part of an entire line item, so the cost is hidden. Thus, under the MMCD, the contractor usually arranges and pays for the owner's quality assurance tests. In some cases, for example, hot mix asphalt testing, the CA has the right to approve the testing firm engaged. So let's look at how the MMCD defines the difference between quality assurance testing and quality control testing. GC 1.57 says, quality assurance means the process by which the owner evaluates if the work is being constructed in accordance with the requirements of the contract documents. The key words here are owner evaluates and in accordance. Quality assurance testing is done for the owner, even if the testing firm is engaged and paid by the contractor. The intent is to provide a minimum of tests to reassure the CA and the owner that the work is proceeding in general conformance with the contract requirements. On the other hand, GC 1.58 says quality control means the process by which the contractor checks specific materials, products, and workmanship to ensure strict conformance with the requirements of the contract documents. The differentiating phrases here are contractor checks and strict conformance. Quality control tests are those done by the contractor above and beyond the quality assurance tests specified in the contract. The contractor has an overriding obligation to meet strict conformance with all provisions of the contract documents. That includes compliance with testing protocols set out in the standards, such as from CSA or ASTM, which are brought into the contract by reference in the specifications. The simple way to understand the distinction is that all tests called for in the contract documents are quality assurance tests for the owner's benefit. GC 4.12.1 makes this clear, saying, tests and inspections required by the contract documents are for the benefit of the owner's quality assurance program. Acceptable test results do not relieve the contractor of the obligation to correct subsequently discovered deficient or defective work. Note the second sentence. Inexperienced contractors sometimes think that having passed a QA test, the work must be acceptable. This GC tries to make it clear that should other testing show a failure to meet specifications, just having passed a QA test does not waive the contractor's obligation to perform all work strictly as required. GC 3.4.7 reinforces this concept by reminding the CA, the inspectors, and the superintendent that quality assurance tests are for the owner's benefit and they do not require or generate any duty or responsibility to anyone else. Then, if quality assurance tests are for the owner's benefit, why doesn't the MMCD set out requirements for quality control tests for the contractor? While there has been discussion about doing just that, the prevailing philosophy is that it's not up to the MMCD nor the owner to tell the contractor how to conduct his business. The argument for listing QC test requirements recognizes that some bidders budget to do a significant number of tests while others plan to do none. This would seem to provide a non-level playing field among the bidders. A second argument is that having more tests done adds to the owner's confidence level about quality. The counter-arguments are that additional testing is not free. Those costs are buried in the bid prices. More importantly, the number and costs of QC tests is a business decision each bidder must make. Beyond that, as I discussed on the previous slide, the number of tests is irrelevant. Strict compliance with all the specifications is the only acceptable standard. So why would a contractor do any quality control tests? The most obvious reasons are to prevent problems before they occur and to limit the extent of problems if they do occur. For example, prior to placing an order, the contractor may require his aggregate supplier to provide test results proving the aggregates will meet specification. Clearly, it is better to confirm acceptability before a problem is identified on the job. As a second example, let's suppose that the QA testing for asphalt thickness is required to be done once every 200 meters of road. An experienced contractor might choose to have thickness testing done every 50 meters. Then, if a substandard thickness is identified, the suspect portion will be only 1/4 of the length it would have been had only quality assurance tests been done. Following the MMCD principles of no surprises and working as a team, GC 4.12.3 requires that when QC testing is done, that information is to be shared with the CA within 1 day of its availability to the contractor. This ensures that when a problem is identified, it is brought to everyone's attention and a rectification plan can be put in place. This tends to minimize cover-ups and the hope that out of sight is out of mind. The owner is paying for quality and deserves to get it. Furthermore, prompt identification and sharing of problems can lead to brainstorming better solutions, particularly when the cause is not obvious. To complete the paperwork trail, a standard specification requires that all test reports be included in the final project documentation, which the contractor has to provide 15 days prior to applying for total performance. In this way, there's a permanent record of the problem and the fact that it was rectified. So far, I've been discussing objective testing done by third parties to the contract. Now let me talk a bit about inspections and rejections done by the CA and inspectors. The CA gets his or her authority to inspect and reject from GC 3.4.4. Note that this is very plainly a subjective evaluation because all it requires is the CA's opinion. Having said that, this is one of the areas where the CA has a contractual obligation under GC 3.6.1 to be impartial. If there are inspectors on the project, then they obtain their authority as a subset of the CA's via GC 3.4.6. Here, they are specifically authorized to inspect work, reject work, and to order special inspections. Once again, because they're exercising the authority of the CA in this regard, they also inherit the obligation to be impartial. Failure to be impartial reflects badly on the individual, their organization, and the owner for permitting it to happen. It may also lead to disputes with significant claims for damages. In addition to the normal inspection and review by the CA and inspectors, sometimes the contract documents include requirements for the CA to conduct or have conducted additional testing by third parties or owner forces. GC 3.4.3 requires the CA to coordinate such additional tests in a timely manner so as not to unduly impede the contractor's schedule. Obviously, when such tests are required, the CA must look to the specific language to determine who initially pays for such tests. There's also another class of additional tests. These are tests which the CA, an inspector, or the owner, through the CA, deem advisable as the job progresses. GC 3.4.5 gives the CA the discretion to call for any additional tests he or she deems warranted during the course of the project. Please note that the published version of the Platinum Edition contained a typo in this GC. It refers to GC 4.12.3, but the correct number is GC 4.12.6, as I've highlighted in red on the slide. These additional tests were obviously not identified in the contract documents, so bidders would not have had the opportunity to include costs in their tender prices. Hence, GC 4.12.6 provides two options for payment. A, if specified before that portion of the work is performed, the CA is obliged to issue a change order to cover the testing and impact costs of the testing. B, if, because of quality concerns, the additional testing is called for after that portion of the work is constructed, then the results of the additional inspection or testing determine who pays. Logically, if the test passes, the owner pays. If not, the contractor not only pays for the initial failed test, but also the correction of the problem and the retesting to prove compliance with contract requirements. As a final comment on options when a test fails, GC 4.12.7 provides a possible retesting protocol. This is for the situation where the contractor believes the test results which showed a failure are incorrect. As an aside, there can be many reasons that the test results are incorrect. For example, poor sampling, poor sample handling, improper lab procedures, inaccurate lab equipment calibration, incorrect calculations, application of the wrong standard or test procedure, or simply random statistical errors. Rather than blindly accepting the consequences of redoing the work, this GC gives the contractor an alternative if they're confident the work is up to standard. The contractor approaches the CA with a plan for additional testing to prove or disprove the initial test results. Once the CA agrees to the plan, the contractor arranges for the additional test or tests to be carried out. Just as with GC 4.12.6, if the secondary tests pass, the work item is deemed acceptable, the original test results are dismissed, and the owner pays for the additional testing. On the other hand, should the secondary testing prove the original testing was correct, the contractor is obliged to pay for the secondary testing, the remediation, and any subsequent confirmation testing. The delays and additional test costs are factors that the contractor must evaluate in comparison to the strength of their belief about the inaccuracy of the initial testing. To summarize, 1. All testing found in the base MMCD are quality assurance tests for the owner's benefit. Owners may add additional quality assurance testing through their supplementals. 2. The MMCD does not presently set out any requirements for minimum quality control testing, believing that that is the contractor's business decision to weigh costs and benefits. Some owners set out quality control requirements in their supplementals, so both CAs and contractors must be aware of that potential. 3. All test results, whether QA or QC, must be promptly reported to the CA and included in the final project documentation. 4. The CA and inspectors have the authority to reject work based on their opinion or to order additional testing beyond that set out in the tender documents. Their opinion must be based on an impartial view of the facts and is always challengeable via a dispute. 5. When additional testing is required, the owner will pay for the tests which pass, but the contractor must pay for tests which fail as well as the remediation costs. 6. With the CA's concurrence, the contractor may challenge a dubious test result via additional testing. Once again, the owner will pay for successful tests, and the contractor is liable for both failed test costs as well as the necessary remediation. Well, I hope this has helped clarify this contract consideration. Please check our website for further assistance and to see what other topics are presented in this series. Thanks for watching.